My name is Melissa B.Golden, holistic therapist and guide devoted to grounded spirituality, emotional healing, soul alignment, and conscious relationships. In this space, I share reflections and wisdom about the art of being human through embodied experience and honest exploration. If these episodes resonate with you, sharing them with someone you love is one of the most meaningful ways to support this podcast. Every share helps it reach the people it was created for. Why do I keep experiencing the same pain over and over in relationships? Why am I always the one left heartbroken? Why are they never ready to commit? If you've ever asked yourself one of these questions, I want you to know something. You are not alone. And more importantly, there is nothing wrong with you. I know because I used to ask myself these exact same questions. For years, I seemed to attract different men who all brought me back to the same ending. It was different faces, different personalities, different cultures, different stories, but the same heartbreak, the same pain over and over again, the same feeling of being left behind. But after enough repetitions, and it did take me enough repetitions, I could no longer ignore the question that was quietly waiting beneath all the others. Why do I keep experiencing the same thing over and over again? And here's the moment that changed everything for me. I remember it very vividly. I was lying in my little student apartment. I was studying psychology at the time, and I was recovering from yet another heartbreaking breakup. I was reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and like every breakup before, this one had completely brought me down to my knees. Because when I love deeply. So naturally, when I connected with someone, I went all in. And every time it ended, it felt like my world collapsed. That day, lying on my bed, I started reviewing all my previous relationships in my mind. There had been a few men, a few serious relationships where I was in love. And at that time, I thought, surely there must be something they all have in common. So I looked. I took my time, and in my mind, I reviewed their appearances, their personalities, their values, their lifestyle, their cultures, even their nationalities. But you know what? The more I looked, and the more obvious it became. They had almost nothing in common. Actually, they couldn't have been more different from each other. That is the exact moment when it hit me. I realized that the only thing they had in common was me. This is when something in me shifted forever. Not because I blamed myself and not because I thought it was my fault, but because for the first time I became aware of something incredibly important. There was something in me attracting these experiences into my life. At that time, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it was strong enough to make me attract the same scenario again and again into my life. And in that case, that was extremely painful because that was heartbreak, and not any type of heartbreak, like the most challenging and destroying one. And that question, that realization was actually the beginning of my spiritual awakening, of my healing journey. Not because I suddenly had answers, I did not at the time, but because I finally started asking a different question. Instead of focusing on the other person, which I was doing before, why do they keep doing this to me? Or outside circumstances, why does this scenario keeps happening to me? I started shifting the focus towards me and asking, what is life trying to show me through these experiences? What within me is attracting them? Again, I didn't have the answer at the time, but the awareness was there, and that question changed everything. Now, even though I was studying psychology at the time, my perspective has never been purely psychological. I've always experienced life through the lens of energy, through intuition, and through the understanding that there is a deeper intelligence moving through us, moving through life, constantly guiding us towards growth, healing, and deeper alignment. Again, at the time, I didn't have the word for it because I was young. It was in my 20s. I think I was 21 at that time. So I didn't have the word for it, but I had the intuition. And I knew, and what I understand is this. We all carry a vibrational frequency, right? The energy we embody influences the experiences we attract. And when we carry unresolved wounds, those wounds will affect that frequency, whether we are aware of it or not. And this is not a punishment from life, right? It's an opportunity. This is how life allows us to grow through experiences, to gain awareness and to grow from a situation, to break free from limitation. Life is trying to help us become aware of what is asking to be healed. The experiences we repeatedly attract often point directly toward the wound that is still active beneath the surface. So those scenarios, as painful as they are not really there to hurt us. They're really there to show us something, to help us break through again and again until we develop enough awareness to see it. Now, as I continued exploring my own patterns, I started noticing something very important. In every relationship, I was overgiving. I was the one constantly thinking about the other person's needs, about their feeling, about their comfort, about their desires. I really gave my energy freely. I adapted, I compromised, I understood, I waited, and I supported. But at that time, never did I ask myself, what do I need? I was not even expressing my needs. I wasn't communicating my boundaries, and I wasn't honoring my non-negotiables. This is very important, by the way. If you are in a relationship or if you're looking to be in a relationship, I highly advise you to sit down, take a pen and a paper and write down your non-negotiables. This is so important to have those non-negotiables clear in your head before you get into your next relationship. So what all of this means is that I wasn't choosing myself. At that time, I was aware of it, of course, and I thought I was simply being loving. But underneath it all, there were another energy operating. If I gave enough, maybe they would choose me. The one thing I wanted was to be chosen. And of course, this was directly linked to my wound, which was the abandonment and rejection wound. If I gave enough, maybe they would stay. Maybe they would finally see my value. Maybe they would love me the way I longed to be loved. And that is where the wound lived. Now, the shift wasn't finding the right man. The shift for me happened before that. It happened when I started choosing myself. Again, I was not really aware that's what I was doing at the time. But now looking back, I know that all the little actions, all the little decisions I made at the time was actually me choosing myself. So after another painful breakup, I made a decision. I stopped waiting for life to happen to me, and I stopped waiting for someone else to choose me. I did not do it perfectly, it wasn't overnight, but I done it consistently. I started traveling alone. I started going to places alone, making decisions for myself, facing fears that had nothing to do with relationships, but everything to do with self-trust, which at the core is the foundation of the relationship we have with ourselves. So fast forward a few years later, I was still in my little student apartment, except that time was towards the end of my studies. And I was looking at the map of the world above my bed. And every time I was looking at the map, I was looking at Australia. I lived in France, and Australia was the end of the world for me. Yet I felt such a strong connection and attraction towards it. But I also was so scared of going there, because I knew that if I was going there, it would be by myself. But that day, on my bed, I took the decision to do something for me and to face my fears. So I looked at the map and I decided in 6 months, I'm going to Australia. I calculated that I needed 6 months to get ready because I was a student. I didn't have any safety net. I didn't have any money. So that was the time I needed to sort everything out, to leave my student apartment, to get psychologically prepared, to find the work, to get the money to go, to let my families know, which I knew there will project all of their fears onto me, and they did. So I needed to first gather all my energy and really center myself to be sure that what I was doing it for me. I really needed to center myself and build up my self-trust and confidence from within so that I could go on this journey that I was feeling so called to go to. That's how a few months later, I took the plane for 30 hours and moved to Australia. Taking the plane was the first challenge for me. It was actually the first initiation, but still I knew I had to do it. Basically at that time, I knew that I was called to face all my fears. I didn't know why, I just knew I had to do it, So that's what I did. Then I landed in Australia. I had very little money. I barely spoke the language. I was as excited as terrified. And yet something inside me knew it was the right path. Looking back now, I can see that I was slowly changing my frequency. Not because I was trying to attract a partner or not because I was trying to become someone else, just because I was becoming more aligned with myself. Because for the first time, I was choosing myself, my truth, my path, and listening to my intuition above everything else. Despite my family's opinion, despite the fears I was experiencing. Now, months later, actually a couple of months after I landed, as the process of choosing myself kept deepening, and after finally letting go of a relationship I had emotionally held on to for far too long, yes, because even when I was in Australia the first few months, I was still emotionally involved in the relationship I had prior to that, even though we had broken up for almost a year at that time. I was still emotionally involved. Remember what I said at the beginning? I go all in, which means that when I'm in a relationship, I'm really involved. And it usually takes me about a year to recover from a relationship. A year where I really gather all my energy back to myself, recenter, and feel myself again. As I was in my hostel bed this time, I always have realizations in my bed, I realized even though I had made all of that milestone and traveling across the world, I was still entertaining a link through text message. And that day I remember thinking, that is enough. This is when I had another shift, a declic. I don't know if you say that word in English, but that is when I realized, Melissa, you travel to the other side of the world to choose yourself. But right now, you still spend some of your energy on a connection that is not aligned with your values, with your needs, with your desire, on a connection that is only serving him. And that's when I realized that is enough. From now on, you reclaim your whole energy back. You stop entertaining connections, conversations that are not aligned with you, with your value and what you really want, And that's what I did. That day, I cut short to the conversation and I really reclaimed my energy back. So the first step was traveling physically to Australia, and it really helped me reclaim my self-trust, my confidence, my sense of self. And that day I reclaimed my whole energy emotionally too, energetically too. That day I stopped entertaining uncertainty, I stopped accepting breadcrumbs, and I stopped negotiating with my own standards. Now, mind you, shortly after that, I think it was a month after that, I met the love of my life. And I think this would have never happened if I didn't have that shift and if I didn't make that decisions. So a month later, I met the man who would eventually become my life partner. We've been together for over 10 years now. But here, what really matters is not that I met him. What matters is the process that allowed me to meet him and who I had to become before I met him. So when I met him, it was love at first sight. My soul, I can't really explain this with words, but my soul recognized him and knew before my mind that he was the one. It really felt like we already knew each other, and it's very hard to describe with words alone. I'm not going to go in details there. If you're interested, I could do that in another episode, but I felt a strong connection that I couldn't explain. Yet, even though I felt that connection, I remained connected and committed to myself for the first time ever. And anyone who has experienced that level of intensity, that level of attraction, knows how hard this can be. But I was determined to keep choosing me, to prioritize my values and to protect my heart. Not out of fear, but out of love and respect for myself. This makes the whole difference. And that's why only a few days after we met, I had a conversation that I never had before. A conversation that I would have never dared having before. And to be honest, this is a conversation that I thought if I have this conversation with him, he's probably going to run away. But I owed it to myself to have it. If I wanted to really prioritize my values and protect my heart and choose me, I had to be clear and express myself unapologetically from the beginning. So as we were outside, I remember thinking, okay, I need to have that conversation now and it needs to be clear. And I was shaking, inside of me because I knew that it would eventually make him run away far, far from me. But I also knew that this was going to filter right away whether or not this was a right fit. So I looked at him and I told him clearly, I know we just met, but before going any further, I really need to know, are you emotionally and physically available? Is your heart free of any past stories or attachments? I don't know how this relationship will go. I'm not saying that we're going to end up together and get married. This is not about that. This is just about making sure that in this moment we are on the same wave. We are aligned and we want the same thing. Because I do not want to go any further, despite the strong connection we have, if we are not aligned. I need to know that your heart is available and that you are not committed to anyone else, to anything else. This is what I choose for myself. This is the non-negotiable I need to just explore the relationship. It might stop in a week of time. It's not really about that. It's just about making sure that right now we are aligned. And if we're not, I'd rather stop now than end up heartbroken 6 months from now. As I spoke those words, I was shaking inside of me because I really wanted this story to happen, but I was prepared to walk away. For real. Without going into detail here, he said yes. And I learned later on that my willingness to show up for myself in that way had set up the standard for how he would commit to me, perceive me, and treat me throughout our entire relationship. After that conversation, I experienced the most beautiful, magical honeymoon phase imaginable. One that still is going on 10 years later, despite all of the challenges we have gone through together. And we have been through a whole lot of challenges, but this is a story for another time. So that conversation on that car park would have been impossible for the younger version of me, for the version of me that overgave, for the version of me that hoped, that abandoned herself to keep a connection. The version of me that started the conversation was different because she chose herself first. And because of that, she attracted something different. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you today is because if you keep experiencing the same pain in relationships, it is not random. You are not unlucky and you're certainly not broken. This is an invitation from life to look deeper into what's happening inside of you, into your own patterns, to not look only at other people and at the external circumstances, but to look at the energy you are embodying. Because the real question isn't, why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, for example? The real question is, what energy am I embodying? What within me is attracting those people into my life, those scenarios into my life? What wound is still active beneath it? What is life trying to show me through the experiences I keep attracting? These are the questions that create transformation. Now, here's a little practice you can start today. Just take a moment and reflect on your relationship history. Then take a piece of paper and reply to those questions. What experience keeps repeating? What feeling keeps returning? What story do I keep living? And what am I hoping others will give me that I struggle to give myself? As you write in response to this prompt, don't judge what comes up, simply observe, because awareness is always, always the first step. And we cannot transform what we refuse to see. Now, awareness is the first step and it is powerful, but awareness alone is not enough, because real transformation happens when we learn how to work with the wound itself, with the core wound, when we learn to reconnect with ourselves, when we stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing ourselves, when we stop outsourcing our worth and start reclaiming it. This is the deeper work I guide women through. So if you're moving through a life transition, relationship challenge, emotional overwhelm, or simply if you feel disconnected from yourself and crave support and guidance along the way, I offer private sessions, a grounded and supported space to gain clarity, reconnect with your truth, and understand what life is trying to show you through your current experiences. You can explore them in the link in the description. And for the women that are ready for a deeper transformation, my private mentorship program called Divine Liberation Code is there for you. This is an intensive program that is all about healing, nurturing, and strengthening the relationship you have with yourself and with life itself. It's about breaking cycle and reclaiming your potential, because the relationship you have with yourself shapes every other relationship you experience. So in the program, through powerful teaching, transmissions, tools, self-inquiry, and ongoing support, I help you develop the awareness, self-trust, and inner resources to navigate life challenges with greater clarity and confidence. Again, you'll find the link to explore all of this in the description below. Now I'm going to leave you with that final reflection, because sometimes the greatest breakthrough begins with a single question. What if life isn't happening to me, but trying to show me something? Until next time, have a beautiful day or night wherever you are.